For 8 years, Roosevelt Clement, better known to everyone in Harlem simply as Rosie, had been more than just a cook to Bumpy Johnson. He had been a constant presence in the underworld kingpin's life, a man whose hands, perpetually trembling from exhaustion and overwork, had become a subtle signature of his diligence. Every morning, those hands prepared Bumpy's coffee, cooked his meals, and carried out tasks with the kind of precision that could only come from routine and loyalty. The tremor in his hands was an outward mark of a man who had poured everything into service, a man whose devotion had never been questioned, until the morning of March 17, 1963. That day, the tremor was gone. Rosie's hands were steady, controlled, almost unnatural in their calm. To anyone else, it might have seemed trivial, but to Bumpy, a man who had survived the most dangerous streets of Harlem by observing even the smallest detail, it was a tell. Something had changed. The man who had fed him, cared for him, and been called family by Mamie Johnson had made a choice, and the weight of that choice radiated from every controlled movement, every deliberate gesture. What made this betrayal so profound was not merely the act itself, but the fact that it came from someone so close. Rosie was more than a cook. He was a fixture in Bumpy's life. Over the years, he had earned his trust in a world where trust was currency far rarer than money. Bumpy had noticed the tremor years ago, once offering to pay for a doctor, and Rosie had refused, saying that it kept him sharp. It was a quirk, a human flaw, something that had endeared him to Bumpy rather than diminished him in the eyes of the mob boss. And now, that same man, whose hands had once been a symbol of loyalty and toil, had been offered a sum of money by the Genovese family, a payment to eliminate the very man who had trusted him implicitly. The contract was $15,000, a figure that, while significant, hardly seemed enough to outweigh 8 years of service, of shared history, of family bonds. Yet, money in the underworld had a way of corrupting even the most steadfast hearts, and Rosie had allowed greed or perhaps fear to overshadow loyalty. The method chosen was meticulous, demonstrating a clinical understanding of patience and precision. Arsenic, a slow-acting, almost undetectable poison, would be administered in small doses over 2 weeks. It was the kind of plan that spoke to the careful, cold logic of organized crime, a method that ensured Bumpy would not immediately suspect foul play. Day by day, cup by cup, the poison would work quietly, invisibly, eroding his health while leaving no trace until it was too late. Rosie's hands, now steady, betrayed not his usual fatigue, but a grim determination. Each movement as he prepared Bumpy's coffee that morning was executed with purpose, a performance of normalcy masking the deadly intent underneath. Steam rose from the porcelain cup like a whisper, carrying the silent promise of betrayal in its aroma. It was the culmination of 16 days of quiet, imperceptible malice, and yet, in the precision of Rosie's hands, in the unnatural steadiness, there was a sign, one that Bumpy, seasoned in the art of reading people, would notice. The psychological weight of such a betrayal cannot be overstated. When someone who has been considered family turns against you, the sense of shock is compounded by the intimacy of the relationship. Bumpy Johnson had survived countless threats, ambushes, and rival gangs, but the danger posed by a trusted confidant was altogether different. There is a unique terror in knowing that someone who has been inside your home, who has witnessed your routines and habits, is now plotting your demise. It is an invasion of the most sacred boundaries, a violation of trust that money cannot excuse. Rosie had crossed that boundary, and in doing so, had underestimated the vigilance and insight of the man he intended to kill. Bumpy's life had been defined by attention to detail, by reading the smallest cues, and this was no exception. The disappearance of a tremor was a signal, an unspoken confession, and in that moment, the dynamic of power subtly shifted. The intended victim became the observer, and the betrayer, though confident in his plan, became the target of Bumpy's scrutiny. This scenario also underscores a broader theme in the world of organized crime, the fragile nature of loyalty. In a life governed by survival, reputation, and profit, even the closest bonds are always subject to erosion by temptation, fear, or opportunity. Rosie's choice illustrates how easily personal relationships can be sacrificed for material gain, how trust can be manipulated and weaponized. Yet, it also illustrates a counterpoint, that loyalty once earned is not so easily deceived. Bumpy's attention to small details, his understanding of human nature, and his ability to perceive intentions hidden beneath layers of civility all ensured that betrayal would not go unnoticed. In the treacherous landscape of Harlem's underworld, such awareness was not merely useful, it was essential for survival. In essence, the morning of March 17, 1963, serves as a stark reminder of the duality inherent in human relationships, particularly those forged under the pressures of crime and power. Rosie, a man of skill, dedication, and history with Bumpy, allowed the lure of money to override years of loyalty. Bumpy, a man defined by perception and intellect, recognized the subtle shift in behavior that revealed the impending threat. It was a collision of human ambition, betrayal, and acute observation, setting the stage for a confrontation that would ultimately demonstrate the consequences of violating trust in a world where such transgressions are never taken lightly. In this, the story is as much about the psychology of betrayal as it is about the raw, violent realities of the streets. A lesson in how the smallest details can expose the deepest treacheries, and how, even in a life filled with danger, insight and awareness remain the most powerful tools for survival. The method of Rosie's plot was both simple and terrifying in its precision. To the untrained eye, the coffee he poured each morning might have seemed harmless, just part of a routine that had been followed for years. Yet beneath the surface lay a calculated, deliberate attempt to end the life of a man who had trusted him implicitly. Bumpy Johnson, one of Harlem's most respected and feared figures, was not someone whose life could be taken lightly. Any threat had to be planned with exactness, subtlety, and patience, and that was precisely what Rosie understood when he accepted the Genovese family's contract. He knew that immediate action would be too risky. A sudden attempt could be traced, LD draw suspicion, or worse, could fail and place him directly in Bumpy's path of wrath. Instead, he chose a slow and methodical approach, one that reflected the chilling, calculated logic of organized crime: arsenic, administered in small, nearly imperceptible doses over the course of 2 weeks. The choice of arsenic was significant in itself. In the criminal world, the methods of killing are as telling as the act. Some seek violence, spectacle, or intimidation. But Rosie's plan was different. Arsenic offered stealth, control, and deniability. It allowed a killer to strike without immediate detection, without drawing attention, and without the risk of confrontation. It was invisible, insidious, a poison that worked gradually, eroding life and health without revealing the hand that delivered it. To someone like Bumpy Johnson, whose intelligence and awareness had kept him alive through countless conflicts, the choice of arsenic would have been both a challenge and a warning. It required cunning, patience, and an understanding of the quiet power of slow death. This method of plotting reflected a chilling professionalism, a deep understanding of human biology and forensic limits, and a willingness to employ every advantage to achieve a lethal objective without ever showing one's hand too soon. Over the 16 days leading up to the fateful morning, Rosie had executed his plan with painstaking precision. Every cup of coffee became an instrument of mortality, each morning ritual a rehearsal in deceit. He measured doses carefully, ensuring they were large enough to have cumulative effect but small enough to avoid immediate detection. Every pour was deliberate, every step in preparation executed with mechanical precision. It was a performance of normalcy, a deception as critical as the act itself. To Bumpy, who had lived his life surrounded by danger and duplicity, there was something almost imperceptibly off about the morning routine. It wasn't just the coffee, it was the steadiness of Rosie's hands, the lack of the familiar tremor that had marked him for years, the subtle difference in posture and movement that suggested intent. Bumpy noticed these details, as he always did, because in a world ruled by power, survival depended on observation. The plan was simple, yes, but the simplicity was deceptive. It relied on trust, routine, and invisibility. And in those very elements lay its risk. What made this method so effective in theory was also what made it dangerous. By employing a slow-acting poison, Rosie attempted to remove the immediate link between act and consequence. The plan was designed to ensure that by the time anyone discovered what had happened, he would already be gone, perhaps in a new city, with a new identity, and his daughter's surgery expenses paid in full. There was a cold logic to this, a calculation that prioritized escape and financial reward over human loyalty and morality. It was the kind of plan that spoke volumes about the moral ambiguity inherent in the mafia world, the willingness to destroy a life for monetary gain, and the belief that cleverness and patience could circumvent justice. Yet, as meticulous as the plan was, it underestimated the awareness and cunning of the man whose life it targeted. Bumpy Johnson was not a man easily deceived. He had survived assassination attempts, rivalries, betrayals, and betrayals within betrayals. Every action, every gesture, every deviation from normal behavior was a potential signal, a clue to be interpreted, and this plot was no exception. The psychological aspect of the method cannot be ignored. Administering a slow poison requires more than just mechanical execution. It requires a sustained commitment to deception, a mental fortitude that few possess. Each day, Ozzy had to suppress the guilt, the hesitation, the human instinct that might question the morality of his actions. He had to maintain the facade of loyalty, all while carrying out the very act that would end the life of someone who had trusted him. This duality, the necessity of appearing normal while committing a crime, created a tension that was palpable, a tension that Bumpy, ever perceptive, could sense. The very precision of Rosie's method revealed a mind operating under calculation, but also a vulnerability, the risk that the human element, the small signs, could betray the plan. Finally, the method underscores the stakes of power and survival in organized crime. In a world where reputation is currency, where a single misstep can cost a life, the meticulous nature of this plot highlights the lethal seriousness of challenges to authority. Rosie's method of slow poisoning was not just an attempt on Bumpy's life, it was a direct assault on his control, his status, and the implicit trust that had governed their relationship for years. Yet, it also illuminates the intelligence and strategic thinking required to counter such threats. In the streets of Harlem, as in any world ruled by the principles of survival and dominance, awareness, observation, and the ability to interpret subtle cues are as vital as weapons or brute force. In sum, Rosie's plan was a chilling testament to the cold calculation of the criminal mind, a methodical approach to murder that relied on patience, deception, and the insidious nature of slow-acting poison. Every cup of coffee, every measured dose, every carefully controlled movement was designed to execute a death that would go unnoticed until it was too late. Yet the very precision of the plan also contained the seeds of its failure, because in underestimating the perceptiveness of Bumpy Johnson, Rosie overlooked the ultimate truth of the streets. In a world of betrayal, the smallest detail can unravel even the most meticulous plot. Bumpy Johnson was no ordinary man, and his awareness of human behavior had been honed over decades in Harlem's most dangerous streets. He had survived assassins, rival gangs, corrupt law enforcement, and betrayals that would have destroyed lesser men. So when something was off, he noticed it, not because he was paranoid, but because observation was his tool for survival. On that morning, March 17, 1963, as steam rose from the freshly poured cup of coffee, Bumpy's attention was drawn not to the liquid itself, but to the hands that poured it. Roosevelt Clement, his longtime cook, whose tremor had been a defining characteristic for years, now moved with an unnatural steadiness. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but to Bumpy, trained to read people with an almost preternatural skill, it was a signal. There was intent in the control, a deliberation that betrayed the act beneath the surface. The man who had fed him, cared for him, and been considered family was acting with purpose. It was a moment that crystallized danger, the moment when trust and betrayal collided, and Bumpy understood, with chilling clarity, that his life hung in the balance. The genius of Bumpy's awareness lay in his ability to interpret minutiae. While the average person might have enjoyed the aroma of the coffee or complained about its strength, Bumpy focused on the signs of intent, the subtle rigidity in Rosie's posture, the precise way he handled the cup, the lack of hesitation in his actions. These were deviations from a lifetime of patterns, tiny cues that signaled a profound threat. In the world of organized crime, where assassination attempts and betrayal were constant risks, such observation was not a luxury, it was survival. Every gesture, every word, every hesitation or absence of one could reveal motives and impending danger. Bumpy had learned over the years that the closest threats often came from within, from those who knew you best, those who had intimate knowledge of your routines and habits. And in this, Rosie had made the fatal mistake. In his attempt to execute a perfect, undetectable plan, he revealed more than he intended. Bumpy's response to this awareness was not impulsive. It was calculated, precise, and aligned with the brutal logic of the streets he ruled. He did not confront Rosie with immediate violence or suspicion. Instead, he allowed the observation to inform his next move, to guide his strategy. He understood that the slow-acting arsenic would require patience to counter, and that any misstep could result in his death. This moment demonstrates not only his intelligence but also his mastery of psychological strategy. In the streets, raw strength and fear could only take a man so far. The true power came from insight, perception, and the ability to anticipate the actions of others before they were executed. Bumpy's awareness was a manifestation of this power, a testament to why he had survived so long when others had fallen. The significance of noticing subtle behavior extends beyond the immediate threat. It represents a deeper understanding of human nature, a recognition that intent often manifests in the smallest changes, a gaze that lingers too long, a tone of voice that is slightly off, a tremor that disappears when it should be present. Bumpy had cultivated this sensitivity, because in his world, underestimation was fatal. To underestimate a rival, a friend, or even a servant could mean death. This awareness also highlights the theme of trust and its fragility. Rosie had been considered family, someone integral to Bumpy's daily life, someone whose loyalty was assumed and taken for granted. The moment Bumpy recognized the threat, assumed trust was shattered. It is a lesson in the precarious balance of loyalty in high-stakes environments. Trust is earned, maintained, and constantly tested, and even the closest bonds can harbor hidden dangers. Bumpy's handling of the situation was as much about sending a message as it was about survival. In choosing a measured, deliberate response, he not only protected himself, but reinforced the consequences of betrayal. This dual purpose, self-preservation and demonstration of power, is a hallmark of effective leadership in the criminal underworld. By observing, understanding, and then acting, Bumpy ensured that Rosie's actions would not go unpunished, while simultaneously reminding others that treachery, no matter how well planned, would not be tolerated. It is a reflection of his reputation, a reputation built not only on violence or intimidation, but on strategic thinking, psychological acuity, and the ability to turn the tables on those who sought to undermine him. The moment also serves as a study in the human element of crime and survival. While Rosie had relied on methodical precision, slow poison, and stealth, Bumpy relied on perception, experience, and the interpretation of subtle cues. It was an interplay between two types of intelligence, one calculated and scientific, the other observational and intuitive. In this contrast lies the drama of the story. Rosie's plan, perfect on paper, was doomed because it could not account for Bumpy's unparalleled awareness. This is a reminder that in any environment governed by high stakes and lethal consequences, understanding people, their habits, motivations, and even unconscious behaviors is often more powerful than any tool, weapon, or strategy. Finally, Bumpy's awareness and response reinforced the enduring theme of control in a chaotic world. Life in Harlem's criminal underworld was unpredictable, dangerous, and often violent. Yet Bumpy's ability to read situations, anticipate danger, and respond decisively allowed him to maintain control where others would falter. The lesson is clear: in a world defined by threat and betrayal, awareness is power, perception is survival, and understanding the subtle signals of human behavior can mean the difference between life and death. That morning, as steam rose from the cup of coffee, Bumpy Johnson exemplified these principles, proving once again why he was both feared and respected, why his reputation endured, and why even those closest to him had to reckon with the consequences of misjudgment. The consequences of betrayal in Bumpy Johnson's world were never abstract. They were immediate, deliberate, and unforgettable. When Roosevelt Clement, known to everyone simply as Rosie, attempted to poison the very man he had served and considered family, he triggered a chain of events that would demonstrate the brutal logic of Harlem's underworld. Bumpy's response was not fueled solely by anger or revenge. It was guided by a code, a combination of intelligence, strategy, and street-hardened wisdom. In the streets of Harlem, survival was not guaranteed by strength alone. It was dictated by awareness, decisiveness, and the ability to convert observation into action. The act of betrayal, though deeply personal, became a lesson in the consequences of disloyalty, one that would resonate far beyond the confines of Bumpy's home and kitchen. What makes Bumpy Johnson's reaction particularly remarkable is the precision with which he balanced justice and strategy. Rather than reacting impulsively, he allowed the recognition of betrayal to crystallize into a calculated response. Rosie had made the grave error of underestimating his perceptiveness. While the arsenic-laced coffee was meant to act slowly, giving Rosie time to escape with the payment fro. The Genovese family. Bumpy turned the plan back on the traitor. This decision was not just about survival. It was about enforcing the rules of his world. In Harlem's underworld, betrayal could not be tolerated, not only because of its immediate danger, but because it threatened the social order, the implicit understanding that trust and loyalty carried value. Bumpy's handling of the situation demonstrated that in a world where violence was always a possibility, intelligence and strategy were often the deadliest weapons. The act of making Rosie drink the coffee he had intended for Bumpy serves as a symbolic inversion of power. For 16 days, Rosie had believed he controlled the situation, believing that careful planning and stealth would ensure his success. He had relied on science, on the slow-acting nature of poison, and on the assumption that the target would never detect subtle changes in behavior. Yet Bumpy, through observation and understanding of human nature, flipped the narrative entirely. What Rosie had intended as a tool of murder became a mirror, reflecting his own treachery back at him. In this moment, the lesson was unmistakable. Those who plot against you may find their plans used against them, and the consequences of betrayal are inescapable in a world ruled by both reputation and survival. Bumpy's decision also reinforces the role of reputation in organized crime. His response to betrayal was a clear message to anyone who might consider testing the limits of loyalty in his presence. Reputation in the underworld is both a shield and a weapon. It commands respect, deters potential threats, and communicates the consequences of actions without the need for continuous displays of force. By ensuring that Rosie suffered the very consequences he had intended for Bumpy, Johnson reinforced his position not only as a survivor, but as an enforcer of the rules. The streets are unforgiving, and anyone who violates trust risks more than personal danger. They risk becoming a cautionary tale for others. In this, Bumpy's actions served a dual purpose. He addressed the immediate betrayal while solidifying the social code that governed his domain. The psychological impact of this reversal is equally profound. Rosie, a man who had operated with confidence, patience, and calculation, suddenly found himself powerless. The tools of his deceit became instruments of his downfall. This inversion is not merely poetic, it is a testament to Bumpy's mastery of human psychology. Understanding intention, reading behavior, and anticipating moves allowed him to turn a threat into an opportunity to assert control. In environments governed by power, perception, and survival, the ability to read human behavior and respond decisively can eclipse brute force. It is this combination of intellect and ruthlessness that cemented Bumpy's reputation as one of Harlem's most feared and respected figures. The incident also illustrates the high stakes of loyalty in criminal enterprises. Trust is rarely given lightly, and betrayal carries consequences far beyond immediate personal loss. For Bumpy, the betrayal was not simply a matter of money or ambition, it was a violation of a bond that had existed for nearly a decade. Such violations threatened the very fabric of the social and operational network that allowed figures like Bumpy to maintain power and influence. By addressing the betrayal decisively, he preserved not only his life but the integrity of the code by which he operated. Loyalty, once broken, demanded recognition and action, and Bumpy's response ensured that the rules remained clear. Treachery carries a price, and the consequences are not negotiable. Beyond personal and strategic implications, the episode underscores the broader themes of survival, intelligence, and morality in the underworld. Bumpy Johnson's approach was not a simple act of revenge. It was a demonstration of mastery over circumstances, a reaffirmation of control in a world where chaos often reigns. By converting Rosie's calculated attempt into a lesson in consequence, Bumpy exemplified how intelligence, awareness, and decisiveness define survival in dangerous environments. In a universe of constant threats, the ability to anticipate danger, perceive subtle cues, and respond strategically separates the survivors from the victims. Ultimately, the story of Rosie and the poisoned coffee is emblematic of Bumpy Johnson's life and legacy. It highlights the delicate balance between trust and suspicion, the power of observation, and the necessity of decisive action when faced with betrayal. Bumpy's choice to make Rosie drink the very poison intended for him illustrates both his cunning and his adherence to the harsh logic of his world. It serves as a vivid reminder that in Harlem's criminal underworld, survival depends not only on strength, but on perception, strategy, and the courage to act when the smallest details reveal the largest threats. Through this act, Bumpy Johnson solidified his status as a man whose intelligence and ruthlessness were inseparable, whose reputation commanded respect, and whose responses to betrayal became enduring lessons in power, control, and consequence.